Hi, everybody. Welcome to Office Hours. Thanks for being here. My name is Anna, and I am a training specialist here in the office. So to give you a background on what Office Hours is, if it's your first time joining us, this really is like our podcast style webinar. What we do each week is we meet up, we discuss a brand new topic. It's even voted on. Typically, our topics have a theme of conversion, ROI, team building in them, and it's a little bit more collaborative than your typical webinar you hear here at CINC, because we really rely on you guys to just jump in, chime in, chat, use Q&A. We can kind of all learn from each other. And so with your participation too, we send out some giveaways from time to time. So keep that in mind. If you have a great idea, please feel free to share it with us. So today, what we'll be discussing is a foolproof follow-up. So I am going to now introduce my co-host, Cayla Priest.
Awesome. Hello, everybody. Thank you, Anna. We're so glad that you're here today to talk about something super important, and that is follow-up. We all know that we have to follow up. We have to stay in touch with people after we have that initial conversation. A lot of our training at CINC really focuses on the time when a new lead comes in up until the first contact. After that, it's hard to quote unquote train on follow-up because, as we'll talk about today, there's no real one way to do it. So we can teach you best practices on, how to do that initial sequence of calls and texting and emails. But after that, it really varies from person to person. So even though we all know that we have to do it, it can be hard to know that we're doing the right thing. So even though we all know that we have to do it, we aren't always doing it. We hear time and time again from agents that we're training with, I don't know what to say, or I don't know what to send, or I called and they're not calling me back. I texted, they're not responding. So it's hard to, again, know you're doing the right thing. It's also hard to stay on track because sometimes it feels like we're throwing everything we have at the wall and nothing is sticking. So I just want to kind of preface what we talk about today as we're going to show you a couple of really easy things you can implement right away to start being better at the follow-up. But know that the sky is the limit. So what we say here today is not to be taken as I have to do exactly this and nothing else. Put your own spin on it because, as we talked about week after week on Office Hours, your personality shining through is really what makes you an individual and makes people really remember you. So we're going to be, again, talking about things you can do right away, but this may spur some other ideas that you haven't been doing. You may kind of spin something we talked about today into something else. As long as you are being really intentional with your follow-up and not just kind of sitting at the end of the month and being like, oh no, I haven't talked to my sphere this month. I got to run and hurry up and do something. That's when we see people kind of going in the wrong direction, when things are not based on a process, but they're based on just kind of a sense of urgency on your part. So how do you know right now if you're not, I'm not going to say bad, even though the slide says bad, how do we know if we're not really doing as well as we could? How do I know if there are things that I can do to help myself kind of feel like I'm doing as well as I can? So the reason that we kind of see agents not following through as much as they should is that we are really attuned to instant gratification. I mean, if we think about it, I will buy something on Amazon because I can get it in 2 days, even if it's more expensive there than someone else, because I don't want to wait. If an app takes 2 seconds longer to load than I think it should, this phone is so slow. We are all really attuned to instant gratification nowadays, so it's not just in the agent world. But I know that as agents, we really chase that commission. Time is really money in any other industry. So it is part of kind of being bad at follow-up because we want to chase the now business and we don't want to take the time to do some of that follow-up. It can also just be simply because we're feeling unorganized. We don't have a good process that's keeping us on track and keeping us attainable to our goals. And it can also be the fear of appearing too pushy. As we know, sometimes a lead is going to want to be communicated with differently than the next person. And so we're afraid that we're going to do the wrong thing, appear too pushy, and lose the sale. Knowing that you have some kind of work to do and follow up can be, if you feel any of that, if any of that resonated with you, you probably aren't, staying on track as much as you could. The other two ways we kind of see people know that they are not doing all that they can for follow-up is if they have a lack of sales. So just point blank, if you are saying, I'm not meeting my goal, I set a monthly goal or a quarterly goal or whatever it is, and you're falling short, or if your team's falling short. Lack of sales, a lot of times we hear, well, I didn't sell because the leads are bad. The leads aren't bad. Usually our process is bad. So lack of sales is usually the number one kind of, I'd say, indicator, symptom that our follow-up is lacking, because maybe we're chasing now business and we're ignoring those people who are a few months out. And then finally, if you're just, especially as a team leader, hearing complaints from the team of, well, the leads aren't good, or I'm not getting enough leads. Normally that means I don't have enough now business and I'm not patient enough to chase those people who are just a little bit further out. But as we know, most leads start the internet search process about a year out. So most of your leads are not going to be now business. We are really in the process, or I'd say in the industry, when we're working internet leads, we are in the industry to work leads and nurture them. So we're going to talk today about the nurture process and some things you can add to that process to make sure you do have that kind of prescribed thing to follow, and we're not flying by the seat of our pants all the time. How do we fix it? That's what today is for. But kind of your first step here is to ask why. Why am I not following up? Is it system oriented? Is it my process is bad? Like I mentioned, is it personal? Is it because I don't have enough time? That could be a symptom of a process issue again, but it can also be because I personally am struggling with staying organized. Maybe I need to stop receiving new leads for the next month or so I can work on my nurture. If it is that personal thing, then do I need to go into a coaching situation? If it's system oriented, that is what we're going to be talking about today.
Cayla, you brought up a really good point. We hear this a lot. We have a broker and they're saying, my team is saying the leads are bad. They're doing the work, they're saying it's bad. And when we say ask why, why are the leads bad? And they're like, oh, they don't want to buy a house. Ask a little bit further, like ask why a couple of times, and pull up the lead and kind of walk them through to and we'll talk about this probably a little bit more too, but we'll go through activity, but really dig into why that's bad. I think that's kind of important to them to really understand why they're bad, because you might actually find out in the process, you might kind of catch some holes in what they're saying and why they're bad. Mm-hmm. You might find out that bad lead that told them that they're not ready to buy right now is logging on every single day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of the most frustrating things about working internet leads is, well, this lead is bad, so I'm going to trash them. And then just on a whim, a few months later, you call them and they bought already. And it's just because you didn't ask the right questions on that phone call to know what kind of follow-up they needed.
Yeah, and sometimes there's a misunderstanding. So well, this lead is bad because they have quote unquote unsubscribed from phone calls. Well, in the platform, they can't actually unsubscribe from phone calls. So I would agree that would be a bad lead, but you can't do that. So we show them that actually they didn't unsubscribe from phone calls, they unsubscribed from text messages. So make sure too that you're really proactive with asking your team, well, tell me a little bit more, tell me why they're bad, and start to kind of poke the bear a little bit with that question, because we might find out, maybe they don't have a conversion problem. Actually, they actually might be quite good, but they might be identifying leads as bad, and we can actually help them increase conversion when we kind of poke around a little bit too on our next team meeting.
Yeah, that's a really good distinction to make for sure. That saying there on the screen, inspect what you expect, that is something that I hear a lot with really top teams. What I hear is a lot, especially new team leaders, and there's no shame in this, is thinking that your team knows what's expected and you don't need to check in on them. They're adults, they can do it. They know what's expected of them, and if they're not doing it, that's on them. But if we're not inspecting or we're not holding people accountable, there's no way that everyone is going to stay on course. So if you expect something to be done, and we'll talk about this a little later, you have to inspect it. You have to hold them accountable. You have to take one day a week or one day every couple of weeks to go in the platform, whether that's you, whether that's a team leader, whether that's an admin for you, whatever that role is, there has to be someone that's inspecting and holding everyone accountable, or else you can have the best system in the world that is quote unquote foolproof, and it doesn't mean that it's actually being done to the really degree that it should be. So let's go ahead and let's talk about when kind of follow up what the golden rule is. And the golden rule of follow up is going to be that it's valuable. It's all about value. So when we're talking about value, is your content meaningful? Is it something saying, hey, I just want to check in, let me know if I can help you? Or is it something where we are saying, hi, I know you were interested in this neighborhood and a couple of new homes have hit the market? Or is it they're building on and starting a new phase? Or is it, there's actually a neighborhood by the same builder that's opening up, a few miles away? So is your content meaningful, or did you just send it because you had to? Because you can just say that now I did follow up. That's going to be the real difference maker. So no longer are we going to send text messages or emails or have phone calls where we say, just wanted to check in and see if I could help. That's really not enough. It has to be meaningful. So our goal here then is going to be engaging with content that does one of two things. It helps leads feel an urge to ask for a discussion, or it provokes some sort of curiosity in them. And asking that question of, how are you? How can I help? That doesn't necessarily do that. It's not sending them something that's going to make them say, oh, I wonder what that's about. Or, oh, that sounds interesting. Or it's not going to make them say, hey, I have a question about what you just sent me. So if your content doesn't meet this goal, it's not valuable, and it's not going to be a valuable piece of your follow-up. So let's talk about some actual things that we can do. What can I send? I think the number one thing that you can do right now is video market reports. We touched on this a tiny bit in office hours past, but I really think I want to kind of focus today on why video market reports are going to be super valuable. First of all, video is really king right now. People love engaging with video. Again, our whole society is attuned to instant gratification. People don't read as much as they used to. People want something right away. So when we do a video market report as visual, we're also showing them our face and letting them build that kind of trust level with hearing our voice and seeing our face and seeing your true personality shine. Anna, I know we've kind of talked about video just being so important here. What are some things, that people can keep in mind, just not even for video market reports, just sending out videos in general to people?
I think the biggest thing is just getting that FaceTime is so important, but make it kind of short and sweet. I think sometimes we get a little bit lengthy when we have these videos, but just like a quick 15 seconds is all that you need to kind of capture the attention of somebody, and then kind of put some sort of action item in, or put a why or how you can help in there too.
Yeah. So keep in mind, these video market reports can be monthly, they can be quarterly, but in between, you can definitely be doing those little short, just kind of check-in videos. And it's so powerful to use someone's name. So if I'm sending Anna a quick video, I'm going to say, hey, Anna, hope you're doing well. So she knows that this was intentionally designed for her, and it's not just a mass kind of video that I'm sending out. For these market reports, though, there are a couple of really powerful things you can do. And the first one is just uploading it to YouTube. Now, these videos don't have to be crazy professional. Don't think you have to have an expensive videographer team. If you do, that's awesome. But it can be something that you just have someone in the office help you kind of do. You can shoot it on a camera. Both iPhone and Android phones and Google phones have amazing cameras now. You would be really surprised at the great quality you can get. It's really cheap to get an external microphone that you can actually plug right into the phone via your kind of charging outlet and really get good crisp audio. And you can actually even do some really easy editing right from your phone apps. There's a couple that I really like. My favorite one is called Splice, just SPLICE. That's a really great app you can use, and it doesn't have to be crazy. But when we upload these videos to YouTube, not only does that give it a home where you can now share it elsewhere, but it also gives it the ability to be found via SEO, search engine optimization. So if I am doing a market report about Marietta, the city where we happen to be in right now, it could be, Marietta, Georgia, summer 2019 market report. And it's going to make it really easy to be found by people just searching on Google. Because YouTube, I actually read recently, is the #2 search engine in the world, right after Google. Things come up super high. From there, when we post it to YouTube, now we can post it on Facebook or Instagram. You are not bound to just those two. If you are doing marketing anywhere else, you are free to share it there. Encourage your team to share it. Encourage your sellers who are currently selling a home in that area to share it. Tag some people. You can really get creative with where you share that. From there, you can also post it on a blog. Again, helps with your SEO. You can also mass email or text the link to that. You can send them straight to YouTube. You can send them to your blog, wherever you want them to go. This is a valuable thing you would be sending. If it's going to your sellers, we would just target that to say, that you might be curious on, prices in your city. If you're still interested in selling, this is going to be super valuable to you. For buyers, wondering what trends are going on in this area, as you're looking for your home over the next few months, this will be super valuable to you. And we just send it out. So again, this could be monthly, it could be quarterly. It doesn't have to be fancy, but I think this is something that not enough agents are taking advantage of. Other ideas. Anna, talk to us a little bit about CoreFact and how this can kind of just help us stay in touch with people.
Yeah, CoreFact is an excellent direct mail option to really kind of put that right in front of their faces. And what we'll ultimately do with something like CoreFact is we have a way to track and obtain leads from a mailer. So they're going to get a little code when they see that CoreFact. They'll be able to they'll see a call to action for their home valuation. And then what they'll do is when they go and plug in that home valuation, put in the little code, it's going to generate a lead. So you'll know exactly who was interested so that you can follow up with them based on that interest. Typically, this is going to be one of our best forms of follow-up too for our sellers.
Yeah, sellers, it's great with. I also recently have seen how it can be really beneficial to buyers as well. So if you send something out that you just listed in a certain neighborhood, there may be someone who's not really thinking of listing at the moment, but now they are seeing that you are active in their neighborhood. And if someone's selling, chances are they're also buying. So a lot of times when you get business this way, you're able to do both sides of the deal by listing and then helping them buy. It also can be, we were talking to a team last week where a client actually moved from one side of the neighborhood to another because they just wanted to be a little closer to like the amenities, and this house was just a different floor plan, and they loved their area, but they weren't in love with their house anymore. And so you really can pick up some buying traffic that way too. I love CoreFact because it actually tracks their interest with a little star rating system. So as you see someone accumulate more stars in your CoreFact kind of dashboard, you know that they have come back to check their value multiple times. And just like Anna mentioned, it's really cool because you can actually get them a personalized kind of value and actually track their interest, which I think is great. Anna, talk to us a little bit about ListCast.
Awesome. So ListCast is one of our favorite ways to do retargeting. And so if the lead, one of my favorite things about ListCast is I think it strengthens the relationship with the lead on the site. If they veer off of the home search site, we're going to show them ads with their internet search history. So they might pop up on a site, like they go to CNN, if they go to ESPN, they're going to see an ad that might, a banner ad where they can give it a click and go back to the site. And then they'll see on those ads that pop up they'll see similar homes. They would also show up too on Facebook or also on Instagram. And then one of my favorite things about ListCast too is it's also we're going to do remarketing on leads, even if they hit our site and they chose not to go through the registration prompt, we're still going to retarget them with ads with homes and try to bring them back to our site. So if we didn't get the opportunity the first time, we're going to get it the second time around, or that could be the third time around. And so what we've seen is increased drive back traffic with this, and it's also really strengthened the activity of sites.
Yeah. So Anna made a really interesting distinction. We will not only be able to retarget people that did register on your site, which is keeping them engaged, driving them back to your site, also targeting those people who chose not to follow through with registering. So this is one of our advertising options. I threw a link in the chat. So if you wanted to take a look at that, if you're an agent on this webinar and not your site owner, feel free to share that with your site owner if you think that sounds interesting, because again, this is one of our CINC advertising options, but it's brand new and we are seeing amazing results with it. Great news here is we're not just setting any home in your market. It's going to be based on exactly what I've already looked at. So if I'm looking at a 3-bed, 2-bath home in a certain area, I'm going to continue to see homes in that area with that bed and bath count in the kind of same price point. And Stephen's saying that they like it. So good. We got one recommendation. Now, finally, I want to just talk about keeping in touch with your sphere via text. This is something where you could do either a drip campaign comprised of text messages where they go out either every other month or monthly, just to keep in touch. Again, this being for your sphere is going to be just keeping in touch and keeping your kind of face and name in front of them. We could also do holiday based, where you have this set up to be more like a plan where things go out on certain dates. It could be anniversary based. But keeping in touch with your sphere via text is great, because even though we're not necessarily targeting them with specific home information, it's really just important to stay in touch with them. I don't think enough agents utilize the drip campaign or the plans feature to kind of automate this. So it could be where we're scheduling it on our calendar and we're sending it out, a mass text manually, kind of based on a date or a holiday like I have on here. But it could be that automated kind of drip campaign where it's just keeping in touch. If it's people that you know from a sports league or from a certain club or a certain marketing or networking group, label them, pull that label up, and just target them with some text messages throughout the year. Again, scheduling that or automating it. Anna, do you get this question a lot on trainings where you're like, well, are you calling to follow up with people? And you hear, well, what do I say?
All the time.
What do I talk about? I get it too. And you probably, everyone listening, you've probably thought this before too. I certainly have. Well, if I call them, what do I talk about? I think we're making it way more complicated than it needs to be. So let's say I talked to Anna last month and she says that she was starting a class or she was going on vacation. I'm going to put that in my notes. Next time I go to call her, am I going to say, hey, how are things? Can I help you with your home search? Or am I going to continue to build a rapport with her by asking her how her class is going or asking her how her vacation was? So if you have something like that, use it to your advantage. You're doing everything possible to have the best conversation. And we've talked about scripting 1,000 times on office hours. So hopefully you have joined us for those and you are saying the right thing on the phone. But the follow-up is so important. And if you've learned these important things, you learned that they got a new job and that's why they're moving. Ask them how the job is. You learned that their parents are moving in with them. Ask them how their parents are doing. If you learn that there's a baby on the way, ask how everything's going. They just had a baby and they're trying to get in a new spot. Ask them if they've got a kid starting school. Ask them about their kid. Whatever they've shared with you that their motivation is, note that and start there. Making it personal is so much better and so much more valuable than just simply saying, hey, I called to see how you've been liking the homes that you're getting. Of course, we want to ask if they've seen anything that they've liked, but we definitely want to make it as personal as possible.
I think where people fall off the bandwagon with that one, where we make it too hard, is when we don't strategize the plan ahead of time.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't, we should put some next steps on there and, kind of call out some of the things that we want to bring up and talk about. So we can do this in a couple ways. We can do this one by adding some notes and make sure that we don't, our note is just a little bit stronger than just call. We want to talk about what is it we're calling on, those bottom line ideas. We want to plug that in there because this just doesn't really help me too much. And then the other thing that we can do too is we might want to label some of our leads. And I think I like labels best when it's in the contacted pipeline. So I might be able to even categorize my leads by my military or my out-of-town buyers. That's a great way for me to take this pool of candidates right here. And then I have a very strategic approach. I'm going to handle that chunk of leads all at one time with my follow-up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so definitely, like Anna mentioned with the, labeling people, we can send out a mass message to people to follow up. For example, if I have, like I mentioned an example earlier about someone being interested in a certain neighborhood, I can label those people as being interested in that area. And when news about that area hits, mass message that out by filtering by my label and sending that out. If it's, again, someone you've met in a certain place, doing it that way. People that you've met at an open house, that there are people that like to get out to an open house, filter by that and follow up with them that way. The sentence that I have here, I saw X, so I saw some article, I saw some news, I saw some home, and I thought about you because we talked about it last time, or because I know that you're interested in that area. That lets people know that you were paying attention, you heard them, and that you remembered. That's half the battle when it comes to getting people to trust you and want to continue to work with you. I think the biggest takeaway for me is this sentence right here. There's no magic formula. As much as we would like for there to be, okay, a lead is going to come in, you're going to call them 4 times, you're going to text them 3 times, you're going to email them twice, they're going to answer on that one, and then we're going to follow up with them based on that. There really isn't that. So when I think about, well, how close can we get to that magic formula? It's proving that your follow-up is not random. That's taking all of these kind of little tips that we've talked about today and using them so they, A, see the value in it, and B, so they know that you are thinking personally about them. Our follow-up should be custom to the lead's decision-making process, not your sales process. So it's not saying, hey, you're 6 months out, which normally means X, Y, Z. It's saying, hey, I know that it was really important that you're in this new school district by the time school starts, and I saw this and thought of you. So it's customized to them and not, working on our kind of timetable. And then again, my favorite thing that just as I've been researching this over the past couple of weeks is provoking reactions based on curiosity. So giving them just enough that it makes them want to ask you more. People value what they are able to question because then it proves to them that it's true. So it's not just, well, yeah, this agent said this, but I don't really know. But if we give them just enough to provoke that curiosity with those market reports, by asking the right questions and by following up with the things that are really valuable to them, that's what creates that curiosity with people. And if you are able to do these things, that's the difference between being persistent and pestering someone. People feel pestered when it's not curious to them. People feel pestered when it feels just like a random, this doesn't pertain to me type of communication. That's when you get people not responding. People don't respond because it either is not curious to them or they don't trust you yet. So it's not enough just to say, well, I sent them one email, they weren't interested, I'm going to stop. It's asking them, how do you prefer that I follow up with you? It's understanding what's valuable to them, and it's understanding that it may not happen on the first follow-up. It could take multiple tries, but if you're using these kind of rules in this method, you're going to see more of a response. Anna, if you could add anything here, what would you add?
I'd probably have to add that it's so important to document what you're doing because, we get so busy day to day and we just forget because we're dealing with a whole lot of leads at once, a lot of activity, and you want to have that visibility and transparency with the next steps. You want to make sure that you're properly outlining it for you and you're using the tools available for you, because that extra step when you end the call is going to save you a lot of time in the long run. But then we get back to that lead and we're like, what is I'm following up with? I have to review all these notes and figure it out. So we want to also be able to pass that ball too from team member to team member if we have to. It's a standard too of, I think, execution excellence, service excellence. When we do that, when we kind of instill that in our culture. And I think we also want to make sure that we're like modeling those things, and we're, creating daily habits of good documentation of our next steps.
Yeah, and that's a really awesome point, because documentation also allows us to track what's been beneficial and what's gotten us a result versus what hasn't. So if you're not documenting and creating that kind of backlog of what you've tried, there's no way to track it, and there's no way to be able to maximize your time and your efficiency next time. I've got a quick question for everyone who's joined, who is currently doing something that we haven't talked about, but you find really helpful, or that you found that you get a lot of benefit from. Again, we love to kind of share best practices here. So if there's something that you're currently doing that you think the rest of your fellow agents would really benefit from. Oh, Stephen, yeah, reminders. Duh. Yeah, Anna and I, and Stephen too, we're all big believers in setting reminders for people. So Stephen, do you kind of have a process for when you set a reminder for someone versus when you wouldn't? Because ours, of course, is when we have that first meaningful conversation with someone to set that reminder to follow up, and then reminding for everything else from there on out. But if you've got something that you really kind of, your reminder rule of thumb, Stephen, we'd love to hear it. And while you're sharing that, let's talk about next week. If you've never joined us on Office Hours, we vote on a topic. So this topic actually came from some votes from our past sessions, and we want to get your feedback on what we talk about next. So I'm about to launch this poll for everyone. Just vote for whichever one sounds best to you, what you want to talk about. You can also choose the surprise me option up at the top for host choice, where we will choose our own to share with you. We also have at the very bottom something else. So use the chat to tell us. You can use the chat to do two different things: to tell us what you would like to learn about, or if you feel like you are an expert in something and you would like to be a guest. We haven't had a guest in a while, so we'd love to have a guest on if there's something you want to share with the rest of the audience. And our other choices are the pond, developing core values and enhancing company culture, or John Maxwell's 5 levels of leadership. Great for people who are either wanting to start a team, who want to move into more of that team leader role, or even someone who's experienced with leading a team and just wants to kind of brush up on some real actionable things that you can kind of take. Go ahead and put your vote in. I'm going to share what Stephen told us about reminders. So he sets one when you move someone to contact it after a meaningful conversation. So that's great. Same that we like to do. And then rarely do I set it for attempted unless they ask me to call at a certain time. Yeah, that's really awesome. So that's a really kind of great distinction to make too. If someone asks you to call at a certain time, yeah, you did talk to them, but they're not contacted yet because we haven't had that meaningful conversation yet. But you can set a reminder if it's early in the morning and they want you to call them at 7 tonight. You want to make sure you don't miss that. That's absolutely fine. And then Stephen has someone else look at his reminders to hold him accountable. So you're kind of like an accountability partner then, right?
You know, the one thing we didn't talk about is making sure that you don't let your reminders go overdue. So like we do all these things, we're so good at it, we follow up, and then we have a reminder set, but are we doing the reminders? Yeah. That's one of the common things I see, and it's not because maybe for the agent's lack of effort or doing it, they're actually also not even giving themselves credit for it. And I think that's even more so what I find happening is they set the reminder, they do it, like, oh, I called that person, I did this, but it's like, why don't you give yourself credit for it? Complete it, add a new one.
Yeah, definitely. So setting that reminder, actually marking it as being completed and setting a new one, because we never want someone to go without one. That's how they fall through the cracks in there. So it looks like the pond has 1 hour vote. I think the pond is a really interesting topic because there's so many different ways to use the pond, and CINC has actually updated our pond capabilities in the past few months. The pond really ties into process. So deciding as a team or as an agent or as an office, a lead comes in, now what? How do we handle it? Who does it go to? How are we working? Do we have an ISA? Do we not? So that might take some time to put together, because we definitely have so many different things we can talk about, but we will definitely start working on talking through working the pond. Perfect. Well, we really appreciate everyone joining us this week. As always, we know you guys are super busy, and it's so important for us to get together and just learn and throw some new kind of action items out on the table that you guys can take away. If you do start to use video market reports or core fact or listcast or sending out those mass texts based on labels, please let us know. We would love to kind of get some feedback from you guys, especially if something from today kind of pushed you to try something that you haven't, and you kind of spin it off on your own. We'd love to hear how that works for you guys. So we really hope that you'll join us every week at 3 Eastern. Anna, do you have anything to add?
No, thanks. I'm looking forward to seeing everybody, and feel free too to come into our next office hours too with the questions or even successes, like how you use it. You learn a lot from the pond, and one thing about it is everyone does it a little bit differently. So we'll be sharing some of those tips.
Yeah. So everyone have a really great rest of the week, a great weekend, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week. Bye, everybody.
Bye.